The lights came up in a warm amber hue as the band played an upbeat version of Kelly Clarkson's hit, and the camera panned across the excited studio audience. Laughter, applause, and energy filled the air as Kelly walked to center stage in a flowing burgundy outfit, waving to the crowd with her signature warm smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a treat today," she beamed. "One of the biggest stars in the world. Action hero, heartthrob, daredevil, and just an all-around interesting guy. Please welcome, Tom Cruise." The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers as Tom strode onto the stage with charismatic energy, flashing that legendary grin. He wore a dark navy jacket over a tight-fitting black t-shirt, and he high-fived a few audience members before settling into the plush chair across from Kelly. "Tom," Kelly said, nearly shouting over the cheers, "you're like the busiest guy in Hollywood. What do you eat for breakfast?" "Adrenaline," he laughed, leaned back, and launched into a charming anecdote about skydiving in New Zealand. Between film shoots, the energy between them was playful, light, and full of mutual admiration. They joked about his past roles, from Top Gun to Mission Impossible, and even poked fun at his infamous couch-jumping moment on Oprah. Tom handled it all like a pro, quick-witted and self-deprecating. But then, as the laughter subsided, Kelly leaned in just a touch too seriously, her tone shifting almost imperceptibly. "So, Tom," she said, crossing her legs and narrowing her eyes with practiced talk show curiosity, "you've always been known as this big, fearless action guy, doing your own stunts and everything, but off-screen people talk, right? About how intense you are. Controlling, Scientology. The marriages, how do you balance that private intensity with being, well, human?" For a beat too long, Tom didn't respond. The crowd murmured slightly, unsure if it was part of the act or a genuine moment of discomfort. His jaw tensed. "That's an interesting way to pivot," he finally said, voice tight but still calm. Kelly gave a half shrug. "Hey, I'm just saying what's out there. And honestly, people are fascinated. You've had this long, storied career, but there's always this cloud of mystery. People say you're almost, unreachable, like there's Tom Cruise, the icon, and then there's Tom Cruise, the man who we never really get to see." The smile was still on her face, but her eyes searched his. Tom leaned forward, his fingers steepled, nodding slowly as he took in her words. "I think people conflate passion with control," he began, measured. "I care deeply about the work I do, about precision, about truth in performance. That intensity comes from love for the craft, not from any need to dominate others." Kelly pushed again, gently but insistently. "But does that love sometimes bleed into other areas? I mean, Katie Holmes, Nicole Kidman, Mimi Rogers, these weren't just flings. There are stories that suggest they weren't exactly free to be themselves, that your personal beliefs influenced their freedom. Even your daughter Suri, people say you haven't seen her in years." The air went heavy. Tom's lips parted, then closed again. The audience had grown quiet. The show's band, sensing the vibe, had stopped playing completely. Tom's face hardened, and the transformation was palpable. Gone was the easy smile, replaced by a guarded intensity. "You're crossing a line, Kelly," he said, his voice low and even. Kelly, still smiling though now a bit tighter, raised her eyebrows. "I don't mean to be disrespectful, I promise. But you've never talked openly about any of this, and this is a space for honesty, not PR." Tom scoffed, his body stiffening. "You call this honesty? You blindside me on your show and dress it up like journalistic integrity." He looked out toward the audience, as if appealing to them for sanity. "You bring me here to talk about movies and end up dragging my family into it, into a one-sided narrative. That's not honesty, that's sensationalism." Kelly didn't back down. "But that's the thing, Tom, the public doesn't know your side, you never tell it. Instead, you disappear into these billion-dollar franchises, and the human part of you, what you feel, what you regret, what you wish you could say, it's all hidden. Don't you think people deserve more than just the myth?" Her tone wasn't accusatory anymore. It was genuine, earnest, perhaps too earnest for someone used to scripted admiration and press junket softball questions. "Do you ever miss being real with people?" Tom stood up slowly, the tension in his shoulders unmistakable. "You want real?" he asked, now facing the audience instead of Kelly. "Here's real. I've given everything to entertain people. I've put my life on the line, literally, for their joy. And all people want to do is poke at the man behind it. They want dirt. They want scandal. They want me to bleed in front of them so they can feel better about their own choices." He turned back to Kelly, his jaw tight, nostrils flared. "I don't owe anyone an explanation for how I live my life. I'm not a tabloid, I'm not a cult, I'm an actor. And maybe if people respected boundaries more, they'd actually learn something about me instead of projecting their own fears onto me." Kelly, now sitting straighter, said quietly, "Maybe people wouldn't need to project if you'd just open up, let people in. Let them see who you really are." There was a pause, charged, deafening, long. Then, in one swift motion, Tom removed the clip mic from his shirt, placed it gently on the seat, and turned toward the backstage curtain. The audience gasped, a collective sound of disbelief swelling in the room. Kelly stood up halfway, instinctively, reaching out. "Tom, wait," she called after him, but he didn't look back. His strides were steady, deliberate. A stagehand in a headset froze as Tom brushed past him, disappearing into the wings without another word. The camera caught Kelly standing alone, visibly stunned, her eyes flickering with confusion and residual emotion. The applause sign didn't light up, the band didn't play. The studio was frozen in that raw, awkward moment that nobody quite knew how to react to. Then, almost reflexively, Kelly turned back to the audience, cleared her throat, and offered a weak smile. "Well, that was unexpected," she said softly, her voice still calm but carrying a tremor. "I guess even action heroes have their limits." There was a smattering of uncertain laughter. A few people clapped hesitantly. A producer stepped forward off camera, motioning subtly for commercial. But the camera stayed on Kelly's face just long enough to catch something behind her eyes. Was it guilt, vindication, worry? By the time the show returned from break, Kelly was back in control, her voice bright, her demeanor polished. She addressed the incident only obliquely. "Sometimes, these conversations take turns we don't plan, and that's okay, because this show is about people, real people. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's difficult. Today was a little of both." She smiled again, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Online, however, the moment was already exploding. Clips of Tom removing his mic and walking off trended under hashtags like #TomStormsOff and #KellyClash. Pundits debated whether Kelly had gone too far or if Tom had finally cracked under the pressure of his carefully manicured image. Fans split into factions, some defending their idol's right to privacy, others praising Kelly for asking what everyone had been thinking for years. On TikTok, lip-synced reenactments of the final exchange went viral. On YouTube, body language experts dissected Tom's posture, his clenched fists, the tilt of his head. On Reddit, conspiracy threads multiplied. Was this orchestrated? Was it real? Did Tom storm off? Or was it all part of some larger narrative? The fallout continued for days. Tom's team issued no official statement, but his publicist was spotted leaving the NBC building in a hurry the next morning. Kelly addressed it again on her podcast, this time more openly. "I care about my guests, but I also care about the truth. And sometimes, truth makes people uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it's wrong to ask." She paused. "I didn't expect him to leave. I really didn't. But I also didn't expect him to avoid the question." Her voice cracked slightly, but she moved on. Other celebrities began weighing in. Jamie Lee Curtis tweeted, "A cryptic truth isn't always convenient," while Alec Baldwin posted a sarcastic video pretending to storm off his own kitchen interview with his wife. The industry buzzed. Was this the beginning of a new era where celebrities could no longer hide behind crafted PR images, where interviewers felt empowered to ask what audiences genuinely wanted to know? Or would it mark a backlash against invasive media culture, a return to safe, pre-approved talking points and puff pieces? Regardless of the answer, one thing was certain: the moment was unforgettable. A talk show appearance turned raw, electric, and viral. The kind of unpredictable authenticity that producers dream of and guests fear. It wasn't neat, it wasn't polished, but it was human. That moment between Kelly Clarkson and Tom Cruise crackled with the kind of unscripted energy that reveals far more than any rehearsed monologue ever could. It exposed the gap between celebrity, myth, and personal truth, between entertainment and interrogation. And it left the world asking 1,000 questions with no clear answers. Was Tom justified in walking out, or had he finally been cornered by the one question he couldn't run from? Had Kelly gone too far, or had she finally broken through the Hollywood wall of silence? And most importantly, what happens the next time a guest sits on that couch, knowing what came before? The next episode of The Kelly Clarkson Show opened with a different energy. The set looked the same, but there was a subtle tension in The next episode of The Kelly Clarkson Show opened with a different energy. The set looked the same, but there was a subtle tension in the air, like a storm cloud lingering even after the rain. Kelly walked out with her usual enthusiasm, but a flicker of awareness passed across her features as she greeted the audience. "All right," she said, smiling. "Let's keep things light today. No one's walking out, I promise." The crowd laughed, easing the mood, but as the show went on, viewers couldn't help but wonder, had something fundamental shifted? Would celebrities now demand pre-approved questions? Would publicists grow even more controlling? Or, in some strange twist, would this be remembered? As the moment the veil was lifted, the cameras rolled, the lights stayed on, and Kelly kept smiling. But somewhere backstage, perhaps in a quiet office, a producer stared at the footage from the day Tom Cruise walked out and knew, with absolute certainty, that television would never be quite the same again.